heard it today and immediately started bopping along to it. So, and then when I listen to the lyrics, it's like, no. I don't need to wait by the phone for anyone, and I don't, whatever those goofy lyrics are from, I don't know, the Platters or the Spinners or something back in the olden days. But I used to do that, I used to wait by the phone. And I had this, one of my first boyfriends lived out of town, out about an hour away from the small town city that I grew up in. And I used to sit, there was this little window right by the side door in our house. And he'd say, I'm going to come pick you up at like 9 o'clock. And so, of course, I would be ready, wanting to get out of the house, wanting to see him, all the rest of it, As a 17, I was probably, maybe I was only 16, not sure, 17, somewhere in there, in those muddy years, And I would wait by that side door, and there was this long window there in our big old house, and I would watch out the window waiting. And my mom wouldn't say much, but she'd say, a watched kettle never boils. And I didn't understand what that meant, but of course I do now. And who knew I was the one I was waiting for all my life. I need to grab my journal because part 3 is coming up. Just a sec. So, wasn't last night, before I get into part 3, awesome? I don't know if you were on last night or if you watched it, but Craig Cardiff, the artist that surprised me, truly surprised me. I was thinking, what does Carrie have up her sleeve? So I'm thinking, Carrie's got a surprise for me. Little did I know, one of my nearest and dearest friends who's been with me through hell and back. We've been through each other, with each other through hell and back, raising our children, leaving husbands and all kinds of stuff. She was behind it, and I think it was about 4 years ago on my birthday, August 13th, Craig Cardiff came to Saskatoon and played in Village Amp and Guitar. And they host some beautiful artists and concerts, and it's such an intimate environment. I really love it there. And so we went to this Craig Cardiff concert. It's almost like a house concert when he plays there, and he has that presence. So if you watched it, the presence that he was there is just the same, only enhanced by, the right lighting and the acoustics and a live audience that is sitting right there. And he's such a great storyteller, and he does beautiful work in the world, works a lot. He's very dedicated to his art, not I don't know, he's a recording artist as well. I don't know him very well personally, but my friend Jackie does, and arranged that special birthday surprise for me and threw me right off the scent of trying to figure out what Carrie had up her sleeve. Good work, you guys. And so I'm very grateful for that. It was a complete surprise. So definitely a divine night, and one that I'm grateful for. Yeah. And so as I was reflecting on part 3 of how did, what was the first yoga adventure that I went on, was the question. Wondering, it was the teacher training I went to in 2003. And it started a little bit before that, in 1999, just as I was approaching, my milestone year. the next year. And as I was starting to wake up to the pulsation of life a little bit, my own pulsation outside family and outside the creativity of, running a home and raising children, which takes great creativity. So if you're, one of those young moms watching and, see people doing all kinds of creative things, your creative juice is going into the time you spend with your children. It takes a true creative genius to do the 24/7, 365 year after year work of guiding and nurturing future generations with love and care and as much humility and grace as you can muster through that intense asana, as I like to say, of motherhood, which requires great surrender and fortitude and creativity. So when that creative pulsation when I started to feel that again and was drawn to exploring, especially after this premonition of my own death, it led me on a journey to quench my thirst and fulfill that deep desire that I had to really get to know myself and nurture myself on some deep level that I didn't understand at the time. And if you've ever been on an epic adventure of any kind, whether it was spiritual, physical, just like adventure travel, whatever, you know that the best places in the world take some effort to get there. The special places. If there's no effort to get there, everyone tends to go, and then we humans in the last few hundred years, probably thousands of years, have had a great way of messing things up and trying to claim special places as our own. But my experience has been that the truly amazing places that I've been to on this earth have required effort to get there. And this place was no different. I took 2 planes. I took a shuttle from the airport in one little town to a town closer to my destination that was about an hour away. And there was an airport shuttle that traveled there. So I took 2 planes, an airport shuttle, a public bus, a ferry, and then a taxi. Those are the modes of transportation that I took. And probably a taxi to the airport early in the morning on the day that I left. And when I landed there, as you heard me read from my journal, I felt this sense of coming home, even though it was late and I had, missed everything of that day that had happened there, and I came to it in the dark. There was someone there to help me get settled in, and my day began bright and early the next morning. I had no idea what I was in for, yet the program that I signed up for was called How to Let More Love and Light into Your Life, or something like that. It had to do with love and light. And at that time, and this is one of those little synchronistic cosmic signs, I was signing any card or wasn't doing tons of email then, but I was signing everything love and light. That was my signature. So that is the only reason why I chose that program. And I, interestingly enough, have never seen it offered again since. But it was leading up to the year 2000. And so many people thought the world was going to end in some way, and that ranged from people just thinking computers would crash and banks would crash and what would we do, to the real survivalist mentality, apocalyptic thinkers down in some of the United States that were big on preparedness and bunkers and going underground and having enough food for a year and having all these non-electrical appliances and independent water sources and stashing food. There was all kinds of mayhem like that going on. So this was November 1st, 1999. And at Yashodhara Ashram, that's where I went on a recommendation of a friend because they had a karma yoga program that could reduce the cost of your stay. And as you remember, didn't have a lot of money back then, so that appealed to me. And they used to have a place in Mexico. That's where I wanted to go. But when I inquired, they were just in the process of closing their Mexican retreat center. And so my only option was BC in November, which didn't thrill me. I was looking forward to zoning out on a beach as well as eating great food and getting to know myself on a deeper level. So I didn't get the beach, but I got everything else and more at Yashodhara Ashram. And most of all was the example of Swami Radha's life and how she was a dancer, and she was a German woman who moved to Montreal. And I could see, after reading about her story and her journey towards herself and her truth and the truth of who she was, it was very human. You know, she had 2 miscarriages. She had lost 2 husbands, one in the concentration camps and one of heart attack. The divine had kind of taken her family life away from her. And that's an important part of my story because, to be quite honest with you, if I hadn't had children before I went to the ashram, most likely I wouldn't have afterwards. The pull to go down that rabbit hole very deeply was so great. And that's another story for another time, how I wrestled with that within my life. But it was Swami Radha's story that helped keep me where I was and accept the life that I had, rather than making, let's just say, drastic changes that were going through my mind. Anyways, back to part 3. So I land at Yashodhara Ashram, enrolled in this 3-day course called Inviting More Love and Light into Your Life. And what it was about was doing a practice that Swami Radha had. It was one of her main contributions. Although she was a prolific writer and left behind a lot of teachings, she was such a great teacher to many people in the West. But her divine light invocation was based on her experience in India right after taking sannyas, vows to become a sanya. Sorry, I'm getting the terms mixed up, so I'm just not even going to try in this moment. Taking vows of celibacy as well as other vows, and being a Swami in the world, wearing orange robes. Swami Shivananda, her guru, said never work for money again, and she didn't. And it was not without many, many hardships. One of the parts of her stories that inspired me greatly, because I thought I had this idea, and maybe you do too sometimes, that once you find a path or a practice, then it's going to be easier than whatever it was that you were experiencing before. And it can be mentally and emotionally, but what tends to happen in my experience was curveballs to test my faith, to grow and expand my true nature, to cause me to dig deeper and pull myself up out of my human mess, my ruts, and rise to my potential again and again and again. But it was the main practice, this divine light invocation. We practiced it so many times and explored it in depth. And it's a very short practice, one that I still do. And I could feel myself becoming lighter and lighter and lighter. And we had a lot of fun with it too. You know, we'd be out working in the garden. Remember, it's a karma yoga ashram. Beautiful place in the Kootenays, right on Kootenay Lake. It's squirreled away in a very special area that has a lot of divine feminine energy. If you want, a lot of artists around there, a lot of creativity, other spiritual teachers and retreat centers. It's a real gem. And people would say, so we'd be out there working in the garden, which is also amazing. We were harvesting at that time in November in BC. I think it was that time. I've been there many times, several times. Seems like many. And we'd say, hey, got a light? You know, as if you're a smoker and you're asking someone for a light. And we would stop what we were doing and we would just do the divine light invocation. So we were doing this divine light invocation over and over and over again, and working with the mantra of it, doing the actions of it, just living, breathing, and practicing, inviting the light into our lives. And those 3 days of doing that practice, because I was there for Tuesday, Wednesday, I landed there Monday night, I was there all day Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I left Friday morning, so I wasn't there for a very long period of time. But those 3 days changed me on a cellular level, and also affected every level of my consciousness. I woke up to so much. It was such a catalytic experience in my life. I don't know that I fully realized it at the time. I simply was enjoying it as a person. I was enjoying eating my meals in silence, and I think I gained 5 pounds when I was there because I just enjoyed my food so much. And the first half hour of every meal time was spent in silence, so I just kept eating, nourishing myself on every level. Truly a beautiful place. If you need to go somewhere and unplug from the mundane and invite more light into your life, definitely highly recommend Yashodhara Ashram. So that's part 3, and I'm going to read just a little excerpt from my diary. And I think someone said, was it just tonight, how wonderful that I still have this diary. That's another story for another time, but I actually lost this journal for 10 years. It disappeared, even though I felt it was one of my most prized possessions, and some of the things that I've written in here and the realizations I had, it completely disappeared, and I searched and I searched and I searched for it, and I let it go so many times, and then I'd find an attachment to it and madly search again. I moved 3 times, or 2 times, 1, 2, and then it mysteriously showed up one day. Remind me to tell you that story if you want to hear it. But for now, I'm going to read just a little bit from November 2nd. So this is after a walking meditation that we did with the Divine Light Invocation. On the first day, my first full day at Yashodhara Ashram, November 2, 1999. I'm becoming more and more aware of the vitality coursing through my veins after every Divine Light invocation. My body and soul like this, and so does my mind. I embrace every aspect of my journey to this place. Such a gift. Every need fulfilled, except the beach. Do I deserve this, though? Yes. Some part of me screams back. Every ounce of my being screams yes. I know this thoroughly. I have no doubts and long to return here before I've even departed. I'm inspired by Swami Radha's light and vision and action. The question, who am I, resounds. When will I know? How will I find out? How do we find out who we are and why we're here? And when will we know? Well, one of the things I like to say is until you know, you don't. So just carry on and be the best you can be. But one day you will realize that you've known all along who you are and why you're here. And that's the day you find yourself falling helplessly and hopelessly in love with not just yourself and your humanity, but with everyone and everything in a way that is, well, there's no turning back. Like that guy in the Matrix, you know? I just want to take the blue pill and forget everything. You never ever want to do that, no matter how tough life gets. After you discover who you are, truly, you'll never doubt, you'll never question. And the thing is, you already do know. It's a process of remembering who you already are, why you came here, why you're here now. And, you know, the veils lift. Maya, right? It conceals and reveals. And so until you know, you don't. Until you can see beneath the magic curtain to the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, you don't see. And sometimes you can't see until, not it's too late, but until, well, you can't see until you see. You don't know until you know. If it's not a yes with every cell of your being, every level of your consciousness, it's a no. And that's okay. That's half the fun of the journey, right? Not knowing, exploring, discovering, keeping that creativity intact. And that's why, you know, it's so important to give young people space to explore and create and fumble through and make mistakes and find their own way, because it's different than yours. But it keeps their creativity and their curiosity intact. There's a quote by Einstein about that, about our imagination being the most extraordinary and precious possession that we have. I forget the exact quote, but, you know, a scientist like that, gotta listen to a man like that who takes things to the very edge and then goes, holy cow. There's something beyond what my mind can figure out and compute. Some mystery that deserves to remain mysterious. That's one of the fun things about life. So, regardless of what your journey is, I hope that my story of surrendering to what is and surrendering to not knowing and accepting where I was, where I am. Trying not to figure out where I'm going, but being present in every moment that I can be. And I failed miserably sometimes. I don't regret the practice of being present. I don't regret the years I spent not making money, yet living such a rich life with my children. It's important to know the words of many people who reach the same kind of point that I am in right now, physically facing their, mortality. Because you'll hear every single person say the same things, and it's so true. Yet we listen, and I know I did this too. I'd listen and I'd hear and I'd take that advice and I'd practice it. But the practice prepares you for the real thing, is what I'm finding out. And it becomes much deeper when you believe it. Truly. Yeah, I don't know. There's still lots that's a bit of a mystery to me in this world that we're living in. I think it's the greatest of times, though. Such challenge brings out such fortitude, courage, creativity, and strength in people. And I love that I'm witnessing this period of great change and upheaval on the planet right now. It gives me hope. Whereas before COVID, it was like very, very cautious optimism that has now blossomed. I think we're in for some very challenging times as a humanity, as a race. We have to do better now that we know better. That's the thing. Once you know, you don't know until you know. But once you do know, and I think it was Maya Angelou that said, forgive yourself for not knowing better, but once you know, do better. And that's what we're being asked to do right now, is do better with each other, in our humanness, because we're kind of messed up on that regard. But I have great hope for the future, whether I'm a part of it or not. My children will be, hopefully. We don't know. Anyways, I love you dearly. Thank you for being here. I need you more than anyone, baby. I'm so grateful for you keeping me company on this journey of mine and listening to my stories. And if you want to hear some of the less illustrious ones, my worst parenting moments, things like that, I'll tell any story you want, if I can remember it, or if I've written it in a journal to help me remember it. And without further ado, I bid you good night.